So you didn't go straight into UCLA?
No, I got accepted straight, but I couldn't go because I couldn't afford it.
So going back to that, what advice would you have for kids that do not get accepted to their college? And
well, even for kids that do get accepted for college, I think unless you go on a full ride, if you're a first generation immigrant, regardless of your ethnic background, like you should probably do what I did, even though I did it against my will.
Yeah.
After the fact, looking back, I realized it was probably the better thing that happened to me because I had friends that were also first generation that got accepted to colleges, but they were first generation born here.
Yeah.
But then they ended up crashing and burning because they were homesick. They couldn't study. They didn't do well in school, even though they did amazing in high school. And they crashed and burned. And then they got kicked out of school for academic probation. And then they ended up going back to junior college, which is where I was.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but now they had this debt from the tuition or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, looking back now, I think like going to a community college, if you're determined to go to a 4-year school, the best thing to do is go to a 2-year college, get through the requirements, kick ass there, and then you transfer to that college that you want, one of your dream colleges. Yes. Because by doing so, you save so much money on tuition. You're gonna miss out on a little bit of that like freshman experience where you're living in the dorm and stuff, but at the end of it, the life experience is you're getting a better life experience than working and going to a JC. And you're saving nowadays in these prices hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that and when you graduate, it's not like your diploma has an asterisk next to it that says like you started at JC. It's just my UCLA diploma is just as good as anyone else's. Yeah. If anything, mine's even better because it's signed by a celebrity. My diploma was signed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, so it has an autograph.
Yeah.
But yeah. So now looking back, it's like, I'm so happy that happened.
Yeah.
It gave me more life experience.
So it was a blessing in disguise.
It made me appreciate UCLA the time I was there more. Yeah. By the time I got there, I was so focused so that I could do that. And I just get in and get out instead of like becoming a 5th or 6th year senior. I came out of undergraduate with only $12,000 in debt.
That's cool.
And so I would say like, look, if you get into a 4-year and you feel like you're mature and ready enough and all that, and you get money to go and you don't have to come out of pocket, please do it. I'm not saying F it.
Yeah.
But if you don't get in or you don't get into your dream schools and you think you have a better shot if you go and kick ass in the JC,
yep,
you'll be happy because at the end of the day, you'll end up with a lot less debt. And some people see that as life experience. So it might even help you in your job later when you have stories to tell.
So, so what I'm taking from the story that you just shared, it doesn't matter where you start.
Right.
It only matters where you finish.
Right.
And in this case, you started a junior college. I mean, you were accepted to UCLA, but then,
I tell people I got accepted to UCLA 3 times. I have my freshman admit letter, I have my transfer admit letter, and I have my law school admit letter.
Nice.
So I'm a triple Bruin when people ask me.
That's so cool.
And so so I really, fell in love with LA, and I've been here ever since, so I've been here longer now than I've been anywhere else.
That's cool. So then you graduated from UCLA undergrad, and then
straight into law school.
Straight into law school,
yeah,
and what led you into law school? Because you talked about.
It's a funny story because I didn't even want to be going to law school. I used law school as a back door into business school.
Okay.
So initially, my goal was I wanted to become an international. If you asked me in high school what I wanted to do as a grown up, I wanted to do international business.
Okay.
I had no idea what that meant, but I knew that international meant travel, and I had never traveled because I was undocumented.
Yeah.
And business meant money, which I didn't grow up with, so I wanted some. I wanted to travel and make money. But if you said specifically what aspect of international business do you want to do, I would have not known. I would have been what? But I also remember seeing the movie Pretty Woman with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. And I remember him getting the girl, and I wanted to do what he did.
Wow.
So what he did was M&A, right?
Yeah.
He bought companies and then sold them in pieces or whatever, and that's how he made his money. And so I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to get the girl, and I want to make money, and I want to travel. And so that was always like my inspiration for international business. So when I got to UCLA, I already felt like I was behind because of like the immigrating and starting school a year behind everyone else. And then taking a year off because also of my not having documentation. So I took a year off before starting back up in the JC again. So now I was 2 years behind. So as soon as I got to UCLA, I went to Anderson School of Business, and I was like, I want to apply. How do I do it till I get in? and they set me up with a counselor. But then they were also like, hey, before you meet the counselor, take a look at the stat sheet. I looked at the stat sheet. 98% of the people that got in, only 2% got in with no work experience. The other 98% all had work experience. So I was like, yeah, I've been working since I was 7. I got all the work experience. But then if you paid closer attention, it was work experience in management level.
Yeah.
I had never been at manager level, right? So I didn't have that work experience. And in my mind, I was like, well, I'm already behind. I can't afford to like go work and then come back because I already know how life happens. And I was like, what if life happens? What if I get married or buy a house or buy a car, or do these things, and then I never come back to school, and then my dream is just gonna go away. So I was trying to figure out how to go straight and avoid the work experience. And my counselor then put me onto this program called the Reardon Fellows, which was kind of an outreach program for folks that like were motivated and wanted to go but maybe didn't have the resources. So I was like, okay, I put me in, coach. And so I went into that. While they were there, one of those sessions had a panel, and one of those panelists was this guy from law school. It was a law panel, and then one of the guys that went to UCLA Law but now was running a similar program but for law school, and it was called the Law Fellows. So then I went to talk to him afterwards, and I was like, I have, one of the reasons I didn't become an actor and one of the reasons I didn't become a litigator is because I have stage fright. So I don't like speaking in front of a group of people, and I get really shy and I get really nervous, and I'm barely getting comfortable doing these things now. But I remember as an undergraduate, I was discovered by an agent, and I remember going out to auditions, and as soon as I would see that stupid little red light, I would start like, hi, my name is Brandon, and I am here to read for. And the thing is, I would see the casting directors and how they like go from being excited to all of a sudden like, oh, and so I get more mad at myself. So I went and I talked to him, and I applied. I got into the Law Fellows, and during this program, I found out that I could do a joint degree. And there was MBA, JD, PhD, MBA, MBA, MD, and I don't have the stomach for medical school, even though I have the mind for it, because it's a lot about memorization, and I can memorize things well. But I was like, I can't be cutting people open, like, nah. And then PhD, I was just like, I don't feel like writing papers and being a teacher like the rest of my life. And so then I was like, okay, I'll go get a law degree, but I don't really like litigation. I don't want to be a trial lawyer. But in the panel, I found like one was a politician, one was a trial lawyer, and one was a business person. And I was like, oh, it seems like you could do a lot with a law degree.
Yeah.
And then through the JD or through the Law Fellows, I found out how versatile a law degree really is. And for me, it turns out I feel it's one of the most versatile degrees out there. Like with other things, you're kind of stuck in what you do. With a JD, you could do so many things. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. I'll go to law school. But my thing was like, I'll go to law school, get into law school. Because in my mind, I was like, there was no way I wouldn't get into law school. So I was like, I'll get into law school. And my first year of law school, I'll apply to the MBA program so I can do the JD MBA program. But once I get into the MBA program, I'm going to drop law school. So it was just a back door into it. But my first year of law school was the first time I struggled with school. Like I had never struggled with school until my first year of law school. And that's because law school was just so different. Like K through 12 and college, they're all very similar. And I had learned the pattern, and I had learned the formula, and I had learned how to get A's without necessarily having to put all the effort, or put the effort in the right place instead of just time, right? It's about being smart, not working hard, and working smart, not working hard. And but law school was the first time where like none of that mattered, because your entire grade was residing on one exam. And then on top of that, it wasn't even just up to how well you did on that exam that determined your grade, is how well you did in comparison to everyone else. So I could technically get a 97% on my exam and still get a C if almost everyone else got a 98 or a 99%. You know what I mean? And because UCLA is one of the top law schools in the country, you have some of the top students in the country, the most competitive students in the country coming. So you could end up with a B or C. It was curve grading, so you could end up with a lower grade, even getting a high score on your exam. So that made shit really stressful.
Wow.
And so that's the first time that like I struggled with school. I wear glasses now beyond these sunglasses that I have. I have these little puppies now. I didn't have them until law school. I went from 2020 vision
Join the club.
I went from 2020 vision to 2100 in 8 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so at first it was just my night vision and everything. I could see little stars on all the lights and stuff.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until one day I was at the law school, my friend was walking towards me. I didn't realize it was my friend until she's like right there where the tripod is, and she's like, "Oh, you're not gonna go say hi?" And I had to squint to realize who she was, and I was like, "I swear to God, I didn't know you. I couldn't tell who you were." She's like, "Yeah, whatever." And then that's when I went to the optometrist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was just a crazy path, and once I was on that journey, I was like, "Well, shit. Now if I take time to study for the GMAT, I'm not gonna be studying for these exams, and if I do great on the GMAT and get in, it's not going to matter because I was going to drop out. But now what if I don't do great and I don't get in, and now I'm stuck with bad grades, and your first year grades are everything that matters in law school." So that's where I decided to bird in the hand, right? I was like, you know what? Forget business school. I'm staying here. This is a versatile degree anyways. And I'm just going to focus on excelling here. And, after my first semester that, I learned how to figured everything out. Then after that, I started excelling and doing well in law school.
And how long did you practice law?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
And you talked about at the beginning, you talked about a big company, law firm that you worked for. Or did you actually work?
So instead of becoming Richard Gere and Pretty Woman, I became Jason Alexander. I don't know if you remember his yes. So he's his lawyer that does all the transactions. So I became that lawyer. So I did the M&A work. So I did a lot of M&A work and commercial real estate for the first couple of years, and then the real estate work died because it was like the 2008 period, 2006, 2008 period. Yeah. And so then I went into the banking and finance side of it. But yeah, so I practiced law for 4 years, 2 years at a big law firm here in LA, and then 2 years at a big law firm in San Francisco. And then it was in my third year that, I don't know if you guys know this, but by the third year of law practice, all the lawyers that start together coming out of law school, by your third year, about 40% of them leave the law practice and they go into something else. And so by my third year, a lot of my coworkers started I want to do something else, or I hate this, or this is too hard. And every time they said this is too hard, I would just be like, bro, just go work at a farm picking fruit for a week, and then you come back and tell me this is hard. It was mentally grueling for sure. Yeah. But we were in an office, we had air conditioning, we had secretaries bringing us coffee and filing work for us. I was like, it's mentally tough, but it's definitely not hard. Paralegals helping. Yeah, so I was like, dude, just go work in the farm for a week and come back and complain to me. Yeah. And so so I was just doing that, and I started having friends asking me for advice, and I don't know why people always ask me for advice, but they do. So I started giving them advice. Yeah. I guess word got out that I gave good advice, so then more people started coming to see me. And when you work at these law firms, it's a billable hour. Yeah. So it's like, dude, I gotta handle my shit too, and you guys are taking up my time. Are you gonna start paying for these billable hours or what?
And it's interesting that you're going that, because I was gonna ask you, what made you pivot from corporate law into representation and media?
Yeah,
so I'm glad that this is a good good
so that started happening, and they were taking up so much of my time that I had to create something to make this more efficient. Yeah. So I created a career chart. And then people that were coming in constantly, I started being like, hey, man, I don't have time for this. Fill this out. And then once you fill it out, come back and then we can talk. Because it was going to cut down our conversation from 3 to 4 hours to maybe an hour. Right. So I was like, do that and whatever. And then it was also at my point, because I had given myself 3 to 5 years to figure out what I wanted to do. Yeah. So now I was already in the 3.5 year mark. So I was like, I need to start figuring out myself. And one day I was at my place on a weekend, and I was like, you know what? I should probably listen to my own advice, and you should grab one of these little freaking forms. And I started filling it out. It was really quiet, and it's weird because I can't concentrate with noise, but I can't concentrate with too much quiet. Yeah. So I turned on the TV. I put on a show I had already seen before just to have it on as background noise. It turns out it was Entourage, and I had already seen that episode, so it wasn't a big deal. But I'm writing on my stuff, right? And as I'm writing it, the agent from Entourage starts throwing stuff and yelling at his assistant. So it catches my eye. I love that scene. So I start laughing, and I think it's great. And then for the first time ever, I realized, like the career and the my career chart that I had done and I was filling out had a lot of overlap with his lifestyle and his work. And I had seen the show for years now, and
It wasn't clicking.
it wasn't clicking that he was just a salesman. Like for
Yes.
me, he was a big Hollywood agent, and it was like such otherworldly. Like he hangs out with celebrities, and like he's going to all the
More
red
about the life,
carpets, and he
yeah.
goes to the studios. But I had never really clicked that at the end of the day, he was just a sales guy, and what he was selling is the talent, right? And the commodity is his talent. So I was like, well, shoot, I watched hundreds and thousands or thousands of movies.
Yeah.
I've seen some of them hundreds of times, a lot of them dozens of times. Like I've seen the careers of people like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio since they started their career.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing Leonardo DiCaprio as a 9-year-old on like growing pains.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So to see these trajectories and having seen so many movies, I started naturally without going to film school, being able to tell what's a good acting versus bad acting versus a good movie and a bad movie. And so that's when I was like, dude, I could do this guy's job.
Yeah.
But I may not be able to act. I didn't even want to think about how to get into directing or writing or producing. But I was like, this guy, like, I'm already set up for it. All the jobs I had between picking fruit and becoming a attorney were in sales. And I was always the best salesman at every company I ever worked. So I was like, I could do that. So I called my career services at the law school. And I was like, hey, like, I want to leave law and I want to become a Hollywood agent. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, we're the #1 entertainment law school in the country. So I need you to help me leave law so I can go become an agent. And the girl got so flustered. She's like, do you want to do entertainment law? And I was like, no, I want to leave law and become an agent. So she got flustered and like she hangs up on me. And I'm like, what the F? And like a couple minutes later, someone else calls me. He's like, hey, sorry, my colleague just didn't know what to do or say. So she came and looked for one of us. And I heard your story and what you're trying to do. And he's like, I don't normally do this. He's like, because I went to law school as well. And
Yes.
I have a bunch of my friends that are agents. And I don't like using my personal relationships because I don't want to burn them. But they're like, you seem like you're determined and like this is what you definitely want to do. So I'll help you set up some interviews and some meetings and stuff like that. And then you kind of take it from there.
Yeah.
So they did that. And I turned some of these informationals into job offers. And I turned some informationals into other informationals that became leads to job offers. Eventually, I pretty much ended up getting a job offer at all the agencies. But again, it was not to be an agent. It was to be not even an assistant. It was to be a mailroom guy. So I started in the mailroom, and
With a law degree.
With a law degree, I went from making $200,000 a year to making $10 an hour pushing a mail cart. So of course, breaking that news to my parents was interesting. Again, my mom being not just a Latina mom, but I think a mom in general. Yeah. She was very supportive. She was like, sounds crazy, but sounds like you know what you're doing, and I'm gonna trust that you do. And my dad was like, we did not come to this country and sacrifice everything, and you go be a lawyer so you can make minimum wage. Yeah. And I was like, Dad, but that's how it all starts. Like, yep. My dad had seen Entourage. I was like, you saw Entourage? Like, his assistant Lloyd, like, he also started, in the same way. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, but, like, that's not for you. Like, you're already making money and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but remember I told you I was going to switch careers? Well, this is what I'm doing. And this is why I told you needed to find a job and you needed to do this because I can no longer pay for the mortgage, And so, yeah, so then I went from a nice big office with a secretary to working and pushing mailroom carts and delivering packages. Did that for 2 months, and then I got promoted to assistant. And then after a couple of years, I got promoted to agent trainee. But then they wanted me to, my 20-year plan. The whole reason I even left law to go into entertainment is initially my goal was to become the first Latino to run one of these big studios. Yeah. And my whole reason for that was because I realized like moguls, these head of studios were the ones that were the final decision makers. So if I could get to that position, then I can choose what movies get made and don't get made so that I can make more of these movies that haven't been made and stories that haven't been told. But over the course of my career, like the industry has really shifted and there's been a lot of mergers and a lot of coming together of studios. So these studio heads are no longer the big moguls they used to be. Now they're middlemen that respond to like higher uppers in the bigger conglomerate, right? And so if I'm going to do that, then I might as well just, instead of being a middleman in a big clog, like in a big system, then I rather continue to do what I do, manage the talent that I manage, continue to, make sure my talent continues to be elevated and gets more elevated. And we're now at a position where we're having clients that are recognizable names that you can use to like sell projects and package projects and develop projects. Both. I focus on talent, but my client or my business partner focuses on writers and directors. So now we can start putting the packages together. We are, a lot of the clients we sign now are through referrals, not through having to like search and look everywhere. And we're at a point now where we're like becoming producers too now. We have a slate of like 12 projects, in the next 2-3 years, we're probably going to have 3 to 5 of these projects like come to fruition. And, now you'll see my name as a producer, not just a
That's
manager.
so cool.
And I'm producing with my clients. And the great thing about being my own business and everything is that I get to choose the clients I want. They get to choose me. And because of this,
It's a mutual.
yeah, but we have like similar tastes, similar
Yes.
goals,
Okay.
similar ideas of what representation means.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to force my client to do something he doesn't want to do or she doesn't want to do. They're not trying to get me to like make produce a movie that I really would never produce otherwise. You know what I mean? And so like the beauty of it is like, I tell people like I don't have 22 clients. I have 22 children. They're like my kids. It's like a family.
Yeah.
We all want what's best for our community and for our representation of ourselves on the outside.
Yeah.
So that we can stop these arguments that you hear out there of.
So how did you and Carlos Bobadilla, right, got together
Well, I
to
was an
establish-
assistant at WME, and
Okay.
he was already a manager. He already had clients, and so I interfaced with him because he had a client with one of my bosses.
And you created the name of the company is
Valor Entertainment.
Valor
Yeah.
Entertainment.
Yeah.
Just wanted you to plug it in.
Yeah. So I met him, and he was already a manager. We started getting along. So when I left the agency to start managing, he and one other manager were the only 2 managers I knew that were Latino, that were in my mind successful because they had clients at the big agencies.
Yes.
So I called him and I was like, "Hey man, can I meet up for drinks? Like I want to pick your brain and I want to find out," because he had worked at an agency and left to start his own management company. So I was like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I want to know everything you did right, and I want to know everything you did wrong. So I can copy what you did right, and I can make sure I avoid what you did wrong.
Yeah, that's a good way to see it.
And so we met up for drinks, and he gave me his advice. And next thing you know, like down the road, an opportunity came up when we started working together at this other company. We ended up having really good working chemistry. Another opportunity came up for a joint venture. And so he pulled me into it, and then that's how we created Valor Entertainment.
It's so cool.
And our company turned 10 on Cinco de Mayo, this past Cinco
wow.
de Mayo. So we're officially 10. We were just excited. Originally, my goal was like, if we can make it to 5 years, man, we can make it, because I had read that most companies fail before they hit 5.
Yes.
So we made it to 5 twice over now. We're 10.
That's so cool.
Where our clients are starting to get to a great place. We're starting to get to a great place. We're a small company. That people think is like it's normally 3 right now. We're between assistants, but it's normally 3 people. But people are like, "Dude, I thought you had like 15, 20 people that work for you." And I was like, "Nah, it's just us. We just do the work of that many people." And that goes back to the work ethic that I grew up with in the farm and in athletics and stuff. So, and what drives me again is just making sure that I can find more things to do and more representation so that we can quiet down these people that try to say we're only these things. And what I'm saying is like, no, we're everything else. And that happens to be a small part of what our community is. Let's look at the 98% instead of the 2%.
That's so cool. So now as a manager and being part of owner of your company, what have been some of the toughest leadership challenges that you faced so far?
Well, one is just like trying to do things differently in a place that's set up by like tradition.
Yeah.
In a place that's set up by relationships.
Yep.
Right. Like coming in as an outsider and building these relationships. I mean, it's taken 15 years to develop the relationships, right, that maybe other people grew up with. Like their 15 years was put in childhood because their friends were coming over and they happen to be executives or celebrities or this or that. Like I've had to build them from scratch. Also having to educate producers and casting directors on the fact that Latinos are not a monolith. We don't look like a single person. We are an ethnicity that's composed of
different
all the
shades.
races. Well, all the races, right? We could be Latino and be black. We could be
Yes.
Latino and be Asian. We could be
Yes.
Latino and be Muslim. We could be Latino and be Arab. Like it's all the things, and that's what makes us Latinos. We're like, there's a book that came out in the 80s called La Raza Cósmica, right? And we're called La Raza Cósmica. The title of the book is because we're one of the most mixed race people out there. And so when I have clients that look a certain way and they try to tell me like they don't look Latino enough, but they're 100% Latino, right? Or they're like, oh, well, they look white, but their accent's too heavy. You know, it's like, well, they're Latino. That's why we're doing this. And they're like, oh, but they don't look like. I'm like, they don't look Latino to you, but they look Latino to Latinos, because Latinos know that we can look like anything.
Exactly.
You know, and that's for me, that's one of the beauties of our culture, that like you could be Latino and look like literally like anything. You could be blonde, blue, white, 6 foot tall, be Latino. You could be a short little person and be Latino. You know, you could be a Chinese looking person that speaks Chinese and are also a full Mexican because you grew up in Nayarit or something. Yes, you know what I mean? Like, it's so crazy that people don't understand that. And like, you know, they'll hear someone's last name be a Jewish last name, like, I didn't know there was Mexican Jews. I'm like, have you been to Mexico City? Like, you've been to Polanco? It's like, you know what I mean? It's just like, dude, there's during World War II, there was a mass exodus of Jews that came to Mexico. Exactly. You know, and since then, like, there's been a widespread of that. But like, that's one of the stories that I'm trying to remember his last name, but his first name was Gilberto, who he was a what do you call him on the La Embajada? He was an embajador, a Mexican embajador to Europe. I think he was in France at the time, Marseille. And during the World War broke out or whatever, initially I think he was sending a bunch of Spanish that were running from the Franco War. He was giving them visas to have him over here. When all this stuff started happening with the concentration camps and the Jews and stuff, he started giving Mexican visas and passports to all these Jewish folks. Word got out, so they all started coming to the Mexican consulate because Mexico had not entered the war yet. The Nazis couldn't do anything,
and the same thing happened with the Salvadorian consulate.
Yeah,
they kept giving visas and also giving Jews Salvadorian citizenship, so they could travel to El Salvador.
Yeah. So this happened, and then eventually at the end of the war, Mexico comes into the war. So now the Gestapo come and arrest Gilberto and his family. They put him in a concentration camp. They're able to negotiate to get him out. And when he comes to Mexico, he gets like this great, you know, all the Jews that he had given all this visas to and stuff, like give him this hero's welcome.
Yes.
You know, and it was funny because there was something I read where like he got an award here in LA shortly before he passed, where they were like, you know, a lot of people say you're like the Mexican Schindler, but it should be the other way, that Schindler was like the non-Latino version of you, because you know, Schindler was made famous obviously because of the movie Schindler's List, and he ended up saving, I think, like 10,000 people or whatever, which is amazing, right? Yeah. By rough estimates, Gilberto ended up saving, I think, like between 40 and 50,000 Jews that got sent to Mexico. So he got this recognition right before he died, and you know, I think one of the gifts that the Lord gave him was like ended up having a long life. I think he died at like 102 years old.
That's awesome.
You know, so it was really, really cool to find out. But I felt so embarrassed. I didn't find out about this until the pandemic. Like, I was scrolling through freaking Facebook and I found this story, and then I was like, I'm such a bad Mexican. How did I not know this national hero like existed? But then I started checking in with all my friends and family in Mexico. Nobody, like hardly anybody knows who he is. And I'm like, how do they not know that? And I guess it had been kept kind of a secret by the Mexican government for like eons, and it just became public more recently. And there's more recognition for him, and there's benches and statues for him throughout Europe. And in Mexico, there's one bench that nobody even pays attention to that has his like little.
Do I sense you working on a project?
Dude, I really wanted to. I found out a documentary. I reached out to the director of the documentary. She put me in touch with I forget if it's his granddaughter or something like that, but she was like being very private and didn't want to you know, and then I found out, I won't say any names, but I found out this other Mexican celebrity has the rights now.
Oh, okay.
And you know, I was thinking about trying to collaborate with them, but they want to direct it and be a star in it, and I'm like, dude, I don't think you can be him. Like I could totally be fine with you directing it. I just don't know that you don't look or the same physical type, like, you know. So If that were ever to change, I 100%. Whether it's me or someone else, I definitely want that story to be told. I think
cool.
it's a great story to tell.
And as far as storytelling is right, let me move into legacy. What kind of legacy would you want to leave through Valor and the work that you're doing in the industry?
Yeah, well, with Valor, like what we wanted, the kind of legacy, and my like people keep trying to buy us out. Yeah. We keep holding off. Maybe at some point, like we do. But in the meantime, like one of the reasons we're not selling and one of the reasons we keep building what we're doing is legacy I want to be able to leave is that we're creating a company where people of color can feel represented the proper way. Mm-hmm. Some of the clients that we get that come from other management companies.
Do you think the industry is moving into that direction?
I mean, it is, but it's hard for you to be... People lean to what they know. Yeah. Right? So if you're like...
Or what they've been exposed to, probably. Right?
Well, yeah, but you know what you were exposed to, right? Yeah. So if you grew up a certain way and you're white and you grew up in a white neighborhood and this and that, but you have a Latina nanny, then the only version of Latinos you know is Latina nanny. And while you care for her a lot, you still just see her as your nanny, right? And so then when, say, you go and become a writer and you want to give exposure and show the love you had for your nanny, well, you're going to write the story about a nanny, right? But we've had already those stories. I don't want to keep telling stories that are being retold. So I want to, like, the legacy we want to leave is creating a safe space where people of color, not just Latinos, can come and feel like they're rep properly and they're seen for who they are as a person, not for just being brown. Yeah. And sometimes not even brown, right? Because like I said, there's a lot of non-brown Latinos.
You come in every shade. But
also in terms of being able to tell like real stories, I want to tell authentic stories. And if we're going to tell American stories, then let's tell American stories that happen to have Latino characters, right? Because one of the issues that I feel we are facing is people try to tell very... every time you're going to tell a Latino story, everyone wants to know, well, is it a Mexican family? Is it a Cuban family? Is it a Puerto Rican family? Honduran family? And it's like, well, the issue with doing that is that because Latinos are not the same as the black folks, that the black folks have all kind of had the same experience. Mm-hmm. Right, they did get brought over from a bunch of different African countries, and they were forced into slavery and all that. Latinos, we come from different cultures, but because of the proximity to the border, we also keep our culture longer. And then it's not even a sense of hatred towards other Latino cultures; it's more a sense of pride in our own culture. Yes, where it's not about like fuck Salvadorians, this and that. It's more about like que viva Mexico, right? Yeah. And so it becomes that where like it becomes almost this like. It's fun and competitive, but it's not fun and competitive when it comes to supporting TV and film. And so for me, it's like instead of making Salvadorian stories that then Mexicans are going to be like, well, that's not for me. Or making Cuban stories that Puerto Ricans are like, well, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. Well, how about we, since we all live here, let's make American stories that happen to have Latinos. And it's not so much about what aspect of Latinidad it is. We're just Latinos that live here. Because that's how we can support each other by going to go see these things, regardless of what the ethnic background is of this family we're telling the story about. We're not going to get more Latino stories told unless we as Latinos go support these Latino stories.
And a lot of times we lack
and we support. We'll go watch all these white movies, all these movies that don't have us, and then we sit here complaining that there's no representation. Then we make movies that do have us, and then we're like, oh, well, they didn't have enough Afro-Latinos in that movie, or they didn't have enough of this represent. And it was like, well, we can't have one movie that represents everything. So how about you start supporting these? Stop trying to boycott your own people. Go watch it. Yeah. You can talk smack about it, but go watch it, and then you have something to say. Like, you watched, I saw this, and yeah, there wasn't this or that. I still support it. Go watch it, but I do want to know that these were my issues with it. That's different than like, I didn't even watch it, but so-and-so Fulanita told me this and that, so I'm going to boycott. I'm not even going to watch it. Now these things lack, and then when the movie fails, right? Like, we felt that through my client's movie, Blue Beetle, right? Like, it was already in development. It was already about to start getting shot, and In the Heights came out. And then In the Heights didn't perform that well. And they're like, oh, well, that's a Latino movie and it didn't perform that well. So the budget for Blue Beetle like went from 100 million or 120 million to like 80 million. And then they went from theater to like trying to release straight to Max. And for me, it's like, dude, like, you don't say that when a white movie fails, right? Like, it's not like they say, oh, Flash failed. Like, we're never going to make another white superhero movie again. It's like, oh, Flash failed. Like, now we're coming out with Superman, and they already have Batman and Supergirl ready to go, right? But like when a Latino movie failed, that was not even a superhero movie. It was a musical. then they're like, oh, well, look, Latinos aren't supporting these films. So this musical didn't do well. So let's cut the budget of this superhero movie. And I'm like, how does that even connect? And then it turns out like there was two other movies that there were musicals that came out at the same time that actually, in hindsight, In the Heights did better than, right? One of them was West Side Story. It didn't do that well. But for that one, they used all kinds of excuses because, you know, they didn't want to tarnish Steven Spielberg's name. So they were like, oh, well, the audience wasn't there, or it was too long ago that the original came out, whatever. And then the other one was like Dear Evan Hansen or something like that. And that one was the worst one out of the three. No one really talks smack about it. They said like, oh, it didn't do a good weekend. And then people stopped talking about it. But for us, they were like, it failed at the box office. Not enough Afro-Latino representation. The black Latinos that were in there were too light-skinned. And it's like, dude, like, why do you have to keep blowing everything out of proportion? You know, and then at the end, like I said, when all was said and done, In the Heights actually performed better than the other two movies. So it wasn't about the movie itself. It was just nobody wanted to see musicals. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so out of the three musicals, that was the best performing musical. So in hindsight, they didn't say, oh, we effed up. It was just a bad time. Let's add more money to these movies now. Let's make more movies. They just said like, oh, Latinos don't go watch movies.
Okay. So. Awesome. So success. Do you consider yourself successful? What does success mean to you?
Bro, that's a crazy question because it's like such a moving goalpost.
Yeah.
Right. And there's some days where I can sit and be grateful for the success that I've had, and other days where I feel like a total failure, you know, despite the successes I've had. And
so it's changing over time.
Sometimes even in the same day. You know what I mean? It's just like, I wake up and I'm just like, man, there's so much I haven't done that I need to do. And it's just like, it's like, it feels like such a heavy weight to carry, and like I don't have enough time, and am I ever going to be able to get to this or that? And then I hear certain things from somebody or a client gets a gig that I'm like, oh my God, this is what it's all about. You know what I mean? And so it's such a moving goalpost. Like I know objectively when I hear my own story, or when people tell me like, dude, like you need to write a book about your life or this or that, I can sit back and say like, man, I do have a cool story, a cool trajectory. There have been some great successes there. But then I also feel like what my goals are and what I really want. And I'm like, fuck, I don't feel like I'm even halfway there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's a moving goalpost, but I also know that something can happen today and there's no tomorrow. Right. And so so at some point, like I have to just be grateful for what I have accomplished, be grateful for what I have, and the fact that I have a beautiful family and I have clients that I adore and that adore me back, and that I will go down swinging for no matter what. I know that we've created this safe space for our clients to be understood and seen, and that we're looking to tell stories that are legitimate, that are real, that are about the successes of our people, not about the failures of our people, not about the victimization of our people. You know what I mean? So anytime one of these battles is won, I feel successful. Anytime I see the list of what still needs to get done, I don't feel like a failure, but I feel like shit, I still haven't won yet. Like I'm still getting there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess it's like comparing the battle to the wars. So it's like we win these battles and it's like a great feeling.
Yeah.
But then you see like, how long is this war going to be? You know, it's like 100-year war.
It is. All right, cool. So Brandon, when you hear the saying, the game is the teacher, you know, podcast name.
Sure.
What does that mean to you? How does it resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean,
because the game could be anything.
Right.
Could be life, could be history.
Well, for me, it's two things. To me, it's the game of life and the game of sports, right?
Okay.
And so, but they're parallel. You know what I mean? And the game of life and the game of sports is, again, you have to have tenacity, you have to have endurance, you have to have discipline, because just like in sports and life, you're gonna get knocked down a bunch. And again, you could either be the person that gets knocked down in a competitive situation in a sport or in life, and you could just tap out and say like, I'm done, I can't keep going. Or you could be the guy that says like, or a girl that says like, I don't care, I'm getting up, because every time you take a step, like that's already a win, and every time you take another step, it's another win. And you could keep getting knocked down, but every time you step up and you come back up stronger. And so for me, that's what it is. Like just learning to not give up, learning to keep getting up, learning to keep coming back, learning from your mistakes, right? That's another thing in athletics and sports that you do. You go and watch the tape. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I improve on? I run these tapes in my head all the time about decisions I made in my life of like, okay, I don't believe in having regrets, but I do believe in we all make mistakes. And it's like, how can I not make that mistake again? Whether it's in a personal relationship, in a family relationship, in a romantic relationship, in a career relationship, it's like, what could I have said differently? What could I have done differently? Let me make sure I learn from it and don't make that mistake again. We're human. As we live life, we're gonna make mistakes all our lives. My goal is to never make the same mistake twice.
That's awesome.
And so that's one thing that I feel I've learned from both the game of life and the game of sports.
That's awesome. I mean, it's been an honor. I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, I love your story. It resonated so much with me because crossing the border,
right,
being here undocumented, all those things, and I'm sure that our audience is. I mean, I was drooling here just watching you, just listening to you.
Man, I appreciate you bringing me on. And like I said, I'm not normally a fan of doing these kinds of things, but I do feel like, especially right now, it's important for all of us to be able to tell our stories. Right now is a time for us that are able to have a voice to speak for those that aren't.
Yep.
And it is a time for us to show people that, yes, I am an immigrant. Yes, I am successful. Yes, I'm not going to be quiet. And, right now there's this fear mongering going on that is trying to make people be quiet. And I'm not going to be that person.
No, we shouldn't.
I want other people to not be those people either. And so I'm here because I hope it resonates with someone other than yourself. I hope it resonates with some young folks out there that are aspiring to do whatever it is in life. Don't let anyone tell you can't do it, even yourself. It's going to tell you in your head sometimes you can't do it. You're going to say, you know what, I can do it. And you are what you believe. And so the more you believe you are something, good or bad, you're going to become it. So might as well believe you're this greatness. Believe you're great. I wear these jewelry a lot because I believe we come from greatness, right? And so all this stuff, our ancestors, like the others are going to tell you and put you down like, you were savages. We had to come and teach you all this stuff. Like, we were not savages, bro. We invented zero before anyone else. Right. We had a wheel before anyone else. We were astronomers and scientists before most other people.
That's right.
We had great civilizations. These conquerors that came did not conquer us. They did not beat us by their wit and their war. They beat us with disease.
Yes.
We beat them back initially, but when they left after we beat them the first time, when they came back and half of our population was gone, was because of the disease that they brought with them. They did not beat us because they had better weapons. They did not beat us because they had better military prowess. And then on top of that, they did take advantage of the infighting we had between clans. I get that, but you know what I mean? So it's like, that's another thing I try to remember, and I hope everyone watching remembers, like, no matter who we are, we came from greatness. We had great civilizations in North America, Central America, South America. We had great indigenous civilizations, and all of those that were all very much advanced from any Eastern or European civilization. And we got beat by disease, not by knowledge or power.
It's awesome. Thank you very much for the time. And thank you for giving us the opportunity. And a little story about Marcos. Marcos was my student. Marcos was on my soccer team, one of the best soccer players I've ever coached. And look at us now, trying to get this little podcast going, trying to just pick, in fact, this morning we were talking about how we have to think outside the box. And, besides our jobs, we want to do something for our community. And, and thank you once again for taking the time to speak to us, to be a role model for our kids, for our parents, para nuestros padres. Es muy importante. We might do this in Spanish for our parents, but lo vamos a hacer en español. So, our parents get to know your story, because it's one of that would definitely resonate with our community, especially, your journey and everything that you've gone through, and the fact that, you went through your obstacles and and everything that you went through, but then now you find yourself in a place of with a voice, and you're not you don't have that, you're not feared to voice your opinion and your thoughts and your beliefs. And for that, I want to thank you once again.
Thank you, man. And I'll take this opportunity also a darle las gracias a mis papás por todos sus sacrificios, los que hemos compartido, los que hicieron cuando no estábamos viendo, y gracias a ustedes es que yo estoy aquí y que puedo ser la voz de muchos, y incluso de ustedes y de mi propia familia. Así es que Gracias a mis papás y a todos los papás allá en el mundo que han sacrificado todo por sus hijos y por su familia y por un futuro para el resto de la familia mejor.
And where can we find you? ¿Dónde te podemos encontrar? En social media.
En social media, en Instagram, es básicamente lo único que uso es at the Brandon Guzmán.
And the Valor?
Y también Valor es at Valor_entertainment_group.
And we're going to have all of that. You'll be able to see it on the screen, right on the bottom.
Right here.
¿Dónde marco? ¿Aquí o aquí? ¿Dónde? ¿Aquí? Aquí, okay. Cool. All right.
You'll see it across my Jaguar.
That's right. Jaguar. All right. Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Gracias, yeah.